Hey everybody, so that first week in October was such an interesting reselling week. You know, the story of reselling is that roller coaster. It goes up, it goes down. We sold the wolf sweater, as you could probably tell from the thumbnail and the title, and we'll get to that in a minute. But also I had another high dollar sale that week on a different platform. So let's hop over to the computer and see what other things sold in that first week of October 2024. Okay, so everybody, thank you so much for all of your pricing suggestions when I first shared the wolf sweater that I found with you. Just as a refresher, if you're new here, I picked up this sweater at a thrift store for $40, and this is what's considered a Cowichan style sweater. Not a true Cowichan sweater, but just kind of in that style. A lot of people use that as a keyword. This is a handmade sweater, and the original pattern used was by Mary Maxim. And so you can find an ad online. I've shown the ad before, but I'll pop it up right here of the original knitting pattern that this came from. But the deal with these sweaters is that they are very collectible, and a lot will depend on the subject matter. So I've had them before where, you know, it was like a camping scene, and I still sold it for a little over $100 or somewhere in there, $200 possibly. But I just had a feeling that the wolf theme was definitely going to be something that people were going to be excited about. Here's a picture of the back. The nice thing about this sweater was that it was also in fairly good condition. So the story happened too is that I was discussing with some of you, I think, that I had kind of like an offer. Well, I had an offer through messages of $500. I had decided to list mine at $700, and it was true. There was some other vintage, true vintage sweaters like this that were listed on Etsy and different places for like $2,000 or $1,000. But I looked at comps, and I thought anything $500 and over would kind of be fair. Some had sold for as little as $300. So I figured if I start at $700 and if I did offers or anything like that, I'd be happy somewhere in that range. Well, I did get an offer for $500, but it came in pretty quickly, and I decided not to rush into it, but to do it, to kind of give it some time. And the potential buyer communicated with me quite a bit about that $500 offer. We went on our vacation. I told him, he came back with like $530 or $540 and said, you know, I just said, we're on vacation. I'll think about this and I'll get back to you when we get back. Now, when we got back, I felt like, of course, we hadn't made a whole lot of money that week, or had worked very much besides sourcing. And so I was like, you know what, take the $530. You're gonna, you know, you made your profit and then some. So I messaged the buyer and said, you know, I think he messaged me, are you back from your trip yet? And so I said, we're willing to take your offer. And then all of a sudden he puts the brakes on it. All along he'd been saying, I'll pay right away, I'll pay right away. Now all of a sudden he's like, no, well, let's wait a week, or like, give me a day to get the payment done. And then he comes back with like all these little questions about, can you take a better picture of this little flaw and this little stain and everything? And I was like, okay, red flag, forget it. So I ended up, I'm like, is he just playing with me? I don't know what's going on. So I just said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do any of that. And I ended the listing and then I blocked him. I just had a bad feeling about it. There was some red flags going on there. So I blocked him, and then I moved on. All right. And so I had it unlisted for a week or so, and I ended up, the reason I delisted it was I wasn't sure in the past, if you already had a conversation going with a buyer, they could still continue to message you even if you blocked them. And I'm wondering if that changed because he stopped messaging me. As soon as I blocked him, I didn't hear from him again. So I'm not really quite sure what was happening there. But I don't know, a week went by, I decided, you know what, let's just try it again. So I listed it again, got a whole bunch of new interest and viewers on it and everything. I had one question about the zipper, which was a fair question, whether the zipper, you know, how smooth it was, which we tested and it was great. And I can't remember if that was the same buyer who ended up, I think it was, because we answered and a little while later, it sold for full asking price of $700. So very, very happy about that. And like my title said, that was not even my best sale of the week. So stay tuned. Just kind of blew me away. Of course, as happens in the reselling roller coaster, like this next week after this good week hasn't been so great. It's been kind of slow, but that just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of been slow all over. So on eBay, I also sold this tunic. Now, I did talk about this brand in a video about kind of more obscure or clothing brands that people weren't talking about. If you guys remember that video, I'm trying to find the tag here for you. Here we go. Allie Miles is the name of the company. And this sold, actually, it did pretty well. It sold pretty quickly. The lovely thing about this is that it was new with tags. And my thrift store didn't have it priced up super high because it's not a brand that people like know very much about, right? So I think I got it for a few dollars. I think it only was priced a little bit higher at the thrift store because it was new with tags. But yeah, just kind of one of those bread and butter kind of brands, but a little bit under the radar. And so this one sold for $30. Next up is some BVDs. Anyway, these were BVD briefs. We sold a package of these before, maybe on Depop, I think it was, but they're kind of the military brown color, and these sold for $20. We had picked them up on a road trip somewhere. Next up was this visor by Titleist. I found this at the thrift store one day. These were new with tags. I found a couple different Titleist hats that day that were new with tags. This sold for $34.99. Now the weird thing is that I got a notification from the post office that I'm getting a package on Tuesday. And I asked Mr. Pish Posh, and we said, well, we didn't order anything. Why would we be getting a package? So we looked at the tracking, and we looked at the town where the package originated from. And the only other connection we had to that town was this hat. So I have a feeling it's on its way back to me, not through eBay, not through the return system. And that'll be the second item in the past couple weeks that people have returned without opening an eBay return. I don't know what's happening, but technically there's no record that they sent it. There's no record of the return. I don't even know what eBay recommends in such situations, but I just feel weird taking it back and then not refunding the buyer. But I definitely do not pay to ship it back. And the last one was obviously an older woman, and she put a little like note in the box. So I don't know. I just kind of went ahead and refunded her, and then we relisted. This one, I'll be curious if they don't like it or whatever. I don't know why people don't just open a return in eBay. It just doesn't make sense. Now, this is an interesting brand. We used to find this in Washington because I believe that's where this brand was from, but it's I want to say Wapiti Woolies, and I don't know if it's Wapiti or if it's Wapiti, but anyway, nice thick winter style hat. I found this at an estate sale, and I think I did pay like $5 for it, but it sold for $28. So just a really nice condition and great colors. Next up is these Fox Racing Legion motorcycle pants. We took an offer for $70 for these. I picked these up at the thrift store not too terribly long ago, maybe like a month or so. Next up is a vintage jacket for Montana State. MSU Bobcats. This sold for $100, was the offer that we either sent or accepted or whatever. But we were very happy to accept that offer. This was part of a storage unit find from a friend that we'll be splitting the profits with. Then, oh, this is a fun find. I think maybe I talked about it in one of my yard sale videos this summer. I did get this at an estate sale from one of the estate sale companies that I go to, and it had been so long since I had found a Marushka piece of any kind, and so there weren't too many comps for the quail design. I think Mr. Pish Posh found a comp for something a little bit smaller. This was 14 by 16, and we got an offer for $95, and so we took that. So definitely keep your eye open for that name, Marushka. And a lot of, you know, it's screen printed fabrics, designs, very 70s, 80s kind of looks going on with them. So if it had been a different design like trees or something, I think I would have kept it. Sold another winter hat. This was just $15, one of our little clearance store finds. Orvis, we have officially decided no more Orvis. We're just not picking it up anymore. It totally looks like the stuff that you should be able to sell easily, and it just, I don't know, I'm sure it just gets marked down pretty well at regular stores or something, or because they sell it at Costco, or I don't know. And I don't even remember where we picked this one up, but we finally got rid of this shirt for $12. Not our finest moment. Now, this hat, we started to run an experiment with a certain kind of sales event that we were trying. We saw another YouTuber talk about, and so the jury's still out because we have to keep practicing or like keep experimenting with it, but we wanted to move more product. And so even if that meant taking some lower prices, then we were happy with that. Because as you know, we've talked about it a lot on the channel, Mr. Pish Posh tends to price higher. And so some of the stuff goes at that higher price, which is totally worth it. And sometimes we just have to reevaluate our pricing or just take offers that are much lower. And this was, you know, we had room for 20% off. This hat, I want to say it came from the bins from our clearance store, because most of our hats do, but it also could have been a yard sale. I'm not positive, but it was a Patagonia hat. Next up was another flip side hat. We mentioned this in a video, a what sold video not that long ago, that I had picked one up at the bins. This one we picked up on our road trip at a thrift store, and it was only, I think, $1.50, I want to say, or $2.50, something like that. But it was new with tags, so that was exciting. Now, the interesting thing about that is that, I mean, it's such a cute little flower on there. What was interesting about this was that I did get a message from the buyer, and they were not happy with how we shipped it. I know, sacrilege. Can't talk about Mr. Pish Posh's shipping like that. But anyway, she didn't appreciate this hat. There was no structure to this hat. The hat was like a felt hat. It's kind of designed to throw in your bag and take with you and things like that. And so he didn't ship it in a box. He shipped it in a bubble mailer, and they didn't appreciate that. So we said, okay, feel free to send it back for a refund. And I said, please open up a return and ship it back. And so far, I haven't heard another thing. So unless this is going to be another item that shows up in the mail all of a sudden, I don't know. But I haven't heard anything since. So maybe they were just fishing for a partial refund or something like that. I'm not sure. We'll see. I'll let you know. I talked about this brand last week because we talked about this brand, in my women's belt video, we talked about Streets Ahead as being a bolo brand to look for. But the one I had in my possession, I had finally tracked it down and listed it, and it took a while to sell, and I thought it would sell faster. But I found this one, I think just at the regular thrift. It wasn't the clearance. I haven't found very many great belts at the clearance anymore. But But I saw this one was Streets Ahead, and I found it like not long after the other one sold. And so I was like, well, I'll just grab this one too. And this one sold within like a couple days, which was amazing. That sold for $39.99. Yeah, I don't think there was, that was full asking price. This one, was it full asking price? Yeah. Yeah, I don't see any kind of discount on it. Okay, this was with the sale price going, 20% off, so just a couple random pieces of Yamazaki. Keep that brand in mind. We're going to talk about it on Flatware Friday soon. Then had some more flatware sell during that sale. These sold for $15.99. Just the oval soup spoons, the larger size spoons. The pattern is Satin Jupiter by Oneida. And then here's the other Spice Village by Lennox little jar that I found. So I shared, I think, the one that sold last week, Time, or the week before. I shared that with you last week, but this was the garlic one, and that sold during our sale for 20% off, $43.99 for that one. Pair of shoes that we took a pretty decent offer on, one of those things that Mr. Pish Posh didn't find comps or just thought, hey, these are nice shoes, and he listed them for $50, and then we finally got a $25 offer because no one was really interested, and we were happy to move them. So we took the $25 offer. And then the last was a personal tool, sold for $145. Mr. Pish Posh had bought this fairly recently for a project and then decided to sell it on. Now, over on Poshmark. Poshmark, let's see, was so-so that week, mostly before the changes happened with the Poshmark fees. If you haven't heard about the Poshmark fee change, there's lots of YouTube videos about it right now outlining it. They made it from a simple kind of 20% fee, like across the board pretty much, unless it was under $15, to now there's like a staggered kind of fee depending on what it sells for, but mostly it's a 5.99% fee, but for the buyer and for the seller. So that's the change that they made. So a lot of buyers are kind of objecting to that, and so my sales did slow down a tad bit after that change happened. But this was a nice Joseph Ribkoff dress that I had picked up. And I mostly picked it up just because the fabric was so interesting. The top layer had these holes punched in it, and then it had the accordion pleats. Joseph Ribkoff, it can be good. Some of it takes a little while to sell. This one probably took a couple months. And it sold for $28. As you can see, we had this little, a few vintage pieces sell on Poshmark that week. This little coffee pot butter warmer enamel thingy-majiggy. Now these usually sell on Etsy like really easily. We decided to take this $18 offer on this one. We generally pick these up if we see them. Then a nice kind of a bigger vintage piece. This sold on Poshmark. The brand is Sirocco. If you guys know it, it's this piece is plastic, but very like this federal decor, 1976 bicentennial, all that kind of stuff was really popular. I had picked this up at an estate sale. It might have been in one of those videos. I'm pretty sure it was in a video as well. I think it was the video where I went to the estate sale like at the end whenever things were half off, and that's when I picked this one up. But I wouldn't have guessed that it would have sold on Posh before anywhere else. Oops. But it sold for $80, and I'm good with that. It took a good, well, I don't know. We didn't list it right away after we got it, so maybe it's been listed a month or so. We sold a coffee mug by Anthropology. I had found two of these with different initials, different letters on them. The other one had already sold, and then this one sold for $14. Sold some flatware on Poshmark. Sold these 4 teaspoons by Gourmet Settings for $24. Then a Kodak camera case. This actually came with a camera in it, but the camera in it was not Kodak. It was another brand. And it was one of the Yashicas, or I don't know, something like that. But we've already sold the camera. And then this was just kind of extra, so we put it up there for sale. A lot of times people will use, especially the young folk, will use these camera bags for purses, which is kind of cool. Then we've got this hat, very 80s looking hat with the brim and the flipped up brim and the big flower, 80s, 90s, very cottagecore. That one sold for $30. And then this for $10, just a little piece. I don't know where we picked it up, but this is a letter and a pen holder, desk organizer. We were glad to move that on for $10. And a vintage sweatshirt, the Montana Grizz and Bobcats National Champions 1995. Made in the USA, sold for $59. Now moving over to Depop, just a couple sales on Depop. This vintage hat sold for $19. And that was our clearance, one of our clearance finds. This crazy kind of mohawk style ski snowboarder hat sold for $35. I want to say it sold for the full asking price. And we got that at a yard sale. And this very cool Western shirt, not a big name brand or anything like that, Cumberland Outfitters, but it had these horse head embroidery on the side. Mr. Pishposh was like, you know, if I dressed in Western, I would totally keep this, because he's like, it's a nice shirt. Like, it, you know, he liked how it fit, and he liked the quality of it as well. So I'm sure the buyer will be happy with that. I think we sold it like in the $36 range. And I think that was not a real page. Okay. Then over on Etsy, we sold one of our little painted organizers, and actually this and the next slide went to the same buyer. So she bought 2 things together, is what I'm trying to say. $35 for this blue one, and then she bought a Walt Disney World coffee mug to go with it for $15. Then this awesome looking card shuffler with this green metal wood handle, and in the green metal, I'm just like reading the title. This was just such a cool looking piece. I think, okay, Mr. Pishposh was telling me the story. He picked it up a while back out of town at a thrift store, and he just felt like it was really rough, like when you turned the handle to shuffle the cards. He opened it up, he like oiled everything, and you know, it just basically, there's not much to it. It's just mechanical. So it's not super smooth, but that's just kind of the way it's supposed to be. There was nothing wrong with it or anything. So closed it back up, listed it, sold it super fast for $60. Then I sold this pair, I found this pair of serving spoons, like a salad serving set, made in Norway, out of pewter. These were at Goodwill, like a few days before they sold, or a week before they sold is when I found them. I found, I think, salt and pepper shakers that probably were donated by the same person at the same time. And so there was a few sales, as you can see, on Mr. Pishposh's Etsy shop. Now, it was kind of funny because I was like, wow, like before this week, we hadn't had a sale in his shop for like 3 weeks. And then I got thinking about it, and I'm like, we put the store on vacation for 1 week, and then I opened everything back up at the end of our vacation, except for this shop. I totally missed it. So like a week later, Mr. Pishposh was going to the list. He's like, oh, the store's still on vacation. Is it supposed to do that? I was like, oops. Okay. But then once it opened, we got some sales. So that was nice. That would have been my fault. And we sold this digital alarm clock for $25. It is the faux wood grain, which is the little type that we have hit upon that seems to sell pretty easily on Etsy for whatever reason. Now let's go over the rest of my sales are on Ruby Lane, and that's like a lot of sales for Ruby Lane. But they were running one of their Ruby Lane red tag sales. Now, the red tag sales generally are 50% off. So that's high, okay? They do those a few times a year, but okay, there's a whole lot of controversy over there just because they seem to run sales more often than they used to. They used to do the red tag sales like quarterly or with a big holiday. And like it built all this anticipation and people would sell tons of stuff. You could just clear out all your dead inventory, 50% off, just do a good clean out, but make a good chunk of money in one weekend. Now they have spotlight sales. They do the red tag sales. Like things are fairly consistent. They're doing them consistently. So a lot of sellers feel like it's training the buyers to just wait for sales. So for sale event type thing. So, you know, there's different ways to look at it, but I don't always participate in all of the sales, especially the 50% off ones, because that is a pretty steep discount. This time I put, I don't know, 100 items or less in the sale. It's just stuff I was tired of looking at, tired of thinking about. And so what's nice, what happens during the sale is you do also sell some full price items. You also, so people tend to buy, even though your items might be priced a little bit lower, they tend to buy more than one in one transaction. And then I had like at least one case where they bought something at half price, but then looked through my store and bought two things at full price. So, you know, it just kind of helps generate sales in general. So one thing I had sold before the sale even started was this brooch. It was signed by Harper. I just picked this up at my local thrift store and it sold pretty quickly after I got it listed. It was gold filled and it had these stones, and I sold that for $22. It was not Harper. There was a few things on eBay under that name, but not a whole lot. Now here is my second big sale of the week, but the higher dollar amount, and that was this bracelet. This bracelet sold for $900. I had it listed for $1,200, but I did have it on a sale at one point. I would not have put it in the 50% off sale, but I did have it on one of like the 25% off sales or something. And so it had been, you know, on sale at one point for $900 or so. So somebody messaged me and asked me if I would consider a lower price than the $1,200. And so I thought, you know what, let me just go ahead and do a quick markdown. I did it. I let her know about it, and she bought it like a couple minutes later. So it worked, and I was totally happy with the $900. That's about the range, anywhere $700 to $1,000, $1,200 is what was happening on eBay with these. This one was in really good condition. It was with its original box and its little screwdriver. So the story with these bracelets, it's called a love bracelet, and it is here, I'll show you this picture of it. It might look familiar because it is made to look like the Cartier love bracelet. Now, it's not considered a knockoff or anything like that. It's a authorized costume version of the real thing. So it's gold electroplated. It's not 18 karat gold like the Cartier one, which would sell for thousands and thousands. But it's still good to know that there is a version out there that's not a knockoff. It's not a dupe, but it's a authorized version. The guy who, Charles Revson, who is the guy behind the Revlon company, he got permission, or that's how they were selling them, but they sold them at department stores and things like this. Now, the bracelet was given to me kind of as a payment for some stuff I did for a client, and payment in the sense that they had these vintage things and they didn't feel like anyone in their family would appreciate them, and they just thought I could get them to a home that would appreciate them. I made sure to, you know, once I got what it was and I looked it up and I said, are you sure? Because this is actually quite valuable. And she said, well, keep it, sell it, do whatever you want with it. I held on to it for so long because, I don't know, I just, whenever I have a high value item, I don't know why, I like hoard it for a little while. I'm getting better. I am getting better. Anywho, you guys have to stay tuned. I found something today. Oh my goodness. You guys should subscribe if you haven't watched yet, if you haven't yet. Or put on your notification or something like that, because I have a video probably coming up this week and I found something that might be, spoiler alert, one of my best finds, best sales so far. Even more so than the $1,700 belt buckle or whatever it was, right? Okay, let's move on. That was $900 and we were very happy about that. And that's been delivered. I did signature confirmation on both orders. Everything's been delivered. Haven't heard anything yet about the bracelet. I do think the sweater is going overseas, but it got delivered to the shipping place. So hopefully everything goes smooth from here on out with that. So in other words, it's been marked delivered. So I did what I needed to do from my end. So hopefully they're just happy with the sweater when they finally get it. These salad serving utensils sold for $10. I threw them in the sale. They weren't, I got them. They look so interesting. There's like birds on the handles. And I just thought they'd be so like unique, and they're not. They're all over the place. And so I just was like, ugh. So I think I had listed them for $20 and these sold in the sale for $10. This little custard glass, it does glow in the dark. It's uranium glass, but it's this, you know, high school in Minnesota, you know, kind of random, but it sold for $14 when the sale went on. Just that one thing a person bought. This actually sold for full price. I did not have this on the sale. Sarah Coventry. It's a ring and bracelet. The bracelet is a little tweaked. It sits okay, I think, on your wrist, but it doesn't look quite right. It doesn't lay quite flat. So I didn't have the price super high on that, but that sold for $18. Then the next two items, I believe, went to the same buyer. These earrings for $8. They're unmarked. They just had glass, like an intaglio cameo on it, which it would have helped probably if I had put cameo in the title. Da, 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 da. And then just these simple Coro. They're screwback earrings, which you don't come across super often anymore, but these just sold for, they got marked down to $6. Just happy to move them on. This butterfly brooch, I think this starts an order for somebody else. $14 for that. And then this was full asking price of $18. And this was full asking price of $15, this cameo brooch. It's by Florenza. I would have gone higher on it, but there was a missing stone in it. So I just marked it down a little bit, and I'm glad it moved in that sale. This was another little bundle that people bought, this mother of pearl leaf necklace. Probably like a souvenir type necklace, like from the Philippines or something like that. That's just kind of the vibe I get. $13 for that one. And then they also bought these napkins for $6. I was happy to let these go. They're very cool little linen napkins, but it was not a complete set. And it was in a bag when I bought it at the thrift store, so I couldn't tell if it was complete or not. And then sold this lemon fork for $11. That was all one order. This one was super low, just this little sugar bowl with lid, but I think I had bought a few pieces of the mid-century or the Corningware Centura, which is that plain white but very kind of mid-century looking set. And as you can see, there's like some marks on the edges and everything like that. Super happy somebody decided to pick this up in the sale for $8, and they paid plenty of shipping, and so we didn't lose, you know, any more money on shipping or anything like that. This also went in the sale, but it sold for $27. I'm sure I had it priced pretty high. It did have like an imperfection in the finish right here, so I'm sure that affected the value of it, but it was, I picked this up at that little, our favorite little ongoing estate sale place where I got all that pottery and glass. And this sold for, like I said, for $27. It was made in Hungary. And then last at Ruby Lane was this youth fork that I shared in the Flatware Friday video about kids flatware. The one made in Denmark with the dancing elephant sold for $12. And actually it sold for a little bit more because I just had a very sweet buyer who wanted to pay with money order or check or something like that. And I do allow that on Ruby Lane. People don't hardly ever use that option, but she sent me a little, she didn't pay right away, or it said personal check. And so I waited and nothing showed up in the mail. And then about a week went by, I messaged her, and then she said that she was housebound and that her home health care giver wasn't there, hadn't been there in a week to help her do what she needed to do. And so I said, okay, I understand. And then another week went by. And so I really wasn't sure what to think. We had gone on our trip, like quite a bit of time had gone by. And Ruby Lane does kind of bug you a little bit if your order is not closed out. There's like a banner on certain pages like don't forget to ship this item. So since so much time had gone by, I went ahead and canceled it, and I told her, I said, it's in the shop, just let me know when you're ready to send the money, and then we'll, you know, let's do the transaction again when you know for sure you can do it. And then I had a feeling this was going to happen, but her check showed up in the mail after we had canceled it. So Ruby Lane has a really nice feature where you can actually create an order. So if I had just sent it to her, it would have been all outside of Ruby Lane, and that would have been circumventing their fees, and that's against their terms of service. And so I created an order in here, but she sent me like more money than the $12 plus shipping. And it's like too complicated to figure this out. So she paid me what she wanted to pay me for this fork, but there was this sweet little note in there about how she collects children's flatware and has been or especially the forks, she'd been collecting them for, you know, years and years, and actually eats with them and everything like that. And she really wanted this one. So I'm glad it all worked out. I shipped it out. Got the payment and everything like that. But that was the story on that one. So anyway, I hope you guys had a good selling week at the beginning of October. I hope it's going good for you. And like I said, I've got an exciting find to share with you later on in the week. And for sure, we will have a Flatware Friday on Friday. So stay tuned for all of that. Leave me a comment down below about how your week is going. What was your best sale? Or just tell me what was your highest sale that you ever had on eBay. I would love, or any platform. I would love to hear about your reselling adventures as well. We will talk to you guys later.